Hello, y'all. Welcome to today's live stream of the clock out. Oh my gosh, I do this, y'all, every time I forget to turn off the audio on my tablet as I get on TikTok. But hello, welcome to the clock out. Today we are talking about the toxic job search cycle, right? And ultimately, leaving that toxic job search cycle is how we can experience more abundance, more ease, and more health, right? Mentally, physically, all of the ease in the way that we exist and what we do. And so today I am talking, yes, about the cycle, how it occurs, but also ways that we can really better evaluate our own behavior in that toxic job search cycle, because a lot of the times we are not aware of our behaviors, what we're doing, how we're moving from one career or from one job to another, right? And so we're going to talk about all of these things today. So if you're here with me, say hello in the comments. Say hello to your girl. As I get onto TikTok, I would love to know that you all are here. So if you don't know me, my name is Mercedes Swan. I am a career coach. My entire mission here is to help other Black women enter their Black Woman Bliss Era, right? By creating careers and businesses and lifestyles we absolutely love. And I live stream on weekdays. For my live stream is named The Clock Out. Okay, The Clock Out. Okay, so we can clock out of our jobs, out of stress, out of our toxic workplaces, and clock into community. So, hey, purpose minded woman on TikTok, and hey, DJ on YouTube. Welcome into the live. I'm so glad that you all are here with me today. So essentially, I just want you to know that I try and create this space that's more of a discussion. It's open. So ask me questions, engage, talk about your experiences. I'm always going to affirm and validate how you're feeling as we move forward, right? Because this is, again, I want a place for community, right? I want a safe space. I want a space where we can be ourselves and feel seen and heard, right? And that's what I'm doing here. So feel seen, feel heard. No, just kidding. And if you don't, I'm going to yell at you. No, I'm just joking. So thank you. Before we get started in this, I just want to remind you that, of course, engaging with this content, whether that's a like, a share, some comments, helps me to kind of get my message out, get this type of content in front of more Black women. So I encourage you, and also really thank you for, yes, listening in, but also sharing if you're able. I always want to hold space for, I know not everyone on LinkedIn and things like that wants their business out in the street. So you're always welcome to send me a direct message as well during or after the live, or if you are watching this pre-recorded. So welcome in, everybody. Say hello if you haven't already. So let's dive into this, right? So first of all, I want to say, like, all of my other clockouts have not been like full presentations. And the reason why is because, again, I wanted it to be more of a dialogue, communication, like really a live stream, like what's up, y'all. But I wanted to, a community member, CJ, asked for this, and I don't see CJ on TikTok, so hopefully CJ comes on soon, because I told her I was doing this. But either way, I created this presentation in my Career Love community. So we'll talk about my Career Love community, but because I am really re-envisioning and recreating that community, I felt kind of comfortable just being able to share this presentation with you all today. But just know that this is kind of the original space and reason that I created this presentation, because it was being asked for in my community for Black women. Okay, so what I always want to say, I am not a licensed health professional. I have dealt with my own mental health challenges. I have seeked medication. I have had formal diagnoses for issues that I dealt with in the workplace. So I say all of that to say that I'm talking about my experiences. I'm talking about my challenges, how I navigated these things. But people on the internet, people on the internet are not meant to replace or serve as your therapist or as your psychiatrist, right? And I want to share that, like, if you are truly in a place where you feel like you may be depressed, you may have anxiety, you may be having challenging thoughts, to please go get the mental health support that you need. I know, especially in the Black community, I like to talk trash about my family, where they would be like, "Oh, you're going to go take your happy pills? Your alarm went off." Yes, I am going to go take my happy pills so that I can exist in this world that's challenging for Black women to exist in. I say all that to say, like, working with a therapist and a psychiatrist absolutely helped me in my journey. This is not to minimize the need or the impact of medication to help you with your mental health. But I'm no longer on those things because I was able to exit and put myself in a better environment from all of this. Okay. So I just want you to know it's always okay to go get the support that you need. And of course, if you are in emotional distress, there's information on this slide to for you to get the support that you need. Okay. So, yes, that's probably not a surprise. I am a toxic workplace survivor. Okay. It's not probably not a surprise based on what I shared. Okay, like I am. So, through my career, right, I talk about my journey, right, and moving through toxic job search cycles. I say this to say that there is not one action or one thing that you can do to escape the toxic job search cycle. It's very challenging for us as Black women. Yes, we can practice discernment and we can practice self-awareness, but we can't fully evaluate every single job that we're going to, every single corporate or otherwise organizational environment and culture before we go into it, right? And so I don't want you to leave this training, leave this webinar, this stream, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, the clock out. Don't leave the clock out. Thinking that this is just a one size fits all solution and that there is some magical thing that's going to happen that's ultimately going to take you away from toxic jobs. I'm teaching you strategies. I'm teaching you approaches that I think will help you to avoid this, to be more self-aware, to ask the right questions, to do the right research, to mitigate kind of moving into those toxic job cycles into other more toxic environments. But again, like this is a journey, right? And so I talk about the beginning of my journey as an intern, where I loved every single day to go to work. I woke up happy, I woke up smiling, I woke up excited, like your girl was ready to take on the world as an HR intern. And the organization that I worked for really changed over time, and then I started dreading to going to work. I remember if you're on the line and you remember this conversation, you know who you are. On my last day at that job, they said, "Wow, Mercedes, it's really nice to see you smile again." And they meant that in the most genuine way, right? Because I'm a very happy person. I'm very excited. I love to love what I do. I love to love on other people. Even though I'm an introvert, so it's like a running joke of like, when I started my career, I didn't really like people. I like people now, but I just realized I have a certain person that I love. But so I say all that like in jest of like, it was hard, right? I lost so much of my joy, right? And I went and launched my job search and then found myself in an environment that I really loved with a supervisor that I really enjoyed working with a very supportive team. And then when I moved into management, that was no longer my experience. Now, I'm not going to put my business all on the street. It's a business all on the street. We're not doing that. But what I will say is that I ignored a lot of red flags for what my experience would be in that next role because it had always been a goal for me to move into management. And I think that's what I want to say here is a lot of times we ignore the red flags because of what we want. And I'm not saying that I regret the decision that I made at all, but I'm saying that we have to be so careful when we're moving through this to get what we want, but also to understand like our environment and our context and how we're moving and how others are moving as well, right? Like I'm not saying to take all responsibility for all of this, right? But I'm just saying that we have like this is the cycle that I went through, right? And then I exited to be in a much more positive work environment that allowed me to build my business, allowed me to again tap into the work that I do when I moved into diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And so these are all levels, these are all pathways and understanding of things. So yeah, so if you've been in this cycle, I see a bunch of y'all over on YouTube and LinkedIn, so say hello to me. But yeah, this is my story. This is my journey. Oh, thank you for the hearts or the roses, excuse me, on TikTok. Love y'all. Thank you. So yeah, let me know, if this is resonating with you, if you've dealt with any of these things in your past. Okay. So I want to talk about this cycle. Now, I talk about this cycle a lot of times and what it means to cultivate an abundance mindset in your career versus operating out of lack. The cycle is not is not unique to me. There are a lot of individuals who talk about this. There are therapy models that are kind of based on this. And so I will say, like, again, I'm not here to talk about therapy, but I'm trying to help you understand that there's a cycle and a connection in how we behave and what we think, right? And so ultimately, every time we have an experience, whether that's at work or otherwise, we have beliefs or thoughts, and we assign meaning to those beliefs and thoughts based on our experience, right? And as Black women, so many of these thoughts and beliefs are really damaging to our mental health, our emotional health, how we navigate, how we relate to others in the workplace. And then those beliefs and thoughts impact our behaviors and our emotions, right? So if we're having microaggressions, right, we may shrink in the workplace and stop interacting with others because of how we've been treated, right? We may have negative emotions when we wake up to work, right? Maybe we have dread before we walk into the office. Maybe we're a little we're a little straggling. We're straggling on the way out of bed or out of the door in the morning or over to the virtual office if you work remotely, right? There's a lot of ways that those beliefs and how we see ourselves in our context impacts our emotions and how we see each other. And then, of course, we have these outcomes and experiences, right? That because we believe this, we act this certain way, and then we have different outcomes. And I talk about this as an important part of the toxic job search cycle, right? Because if you've only dealt with terrible supervisors, right, then you believe that supervisors are most likely or always going to be toxic, right? So then because of that, that shifts how you behave with all of your supervisors. And then you're probably more likely to have negative experiences with your next supervisor because of maybe how you're interacting with them or you're behaving, right? And I'm not saying this that it makes it your fault. I'm saying that all of these things are connected and we have to listen to what we're hearing and seeing in our interactions and how we think about things and how that's really a part of this toxic job search cycle. So, right, it's more than just what's going on in the day to day. And so for me, one of the things I learned going through this cycle was that there were decisions that I made that led to me being in those toxic environments, right? It doesn't co-sign it's not being an apologist for these environments or whatever. Hi, Tamara, welcome to the live. It doesn't make these things okay. But it means that I had to learn that I was a part of this cycle, right? I also, like I said, it had a big impact on my mental health. It also had a big impact on my career trajectory, right? When you're in those environments and you have a lack of confidence, right? You're less likely to go for those higher level roles. You're less likely to ask for the promotion or the salary that you're owed because you don't feel as confident, or maybe you don't feel like you deserve that. And then it decreases your earning potential, right? Again, these things are compounding, and particularly for Black women, right? Because it's not like just like, okay, we're taking on the mental load of this toxic workplace, but also we're already underpaid, right? We have the pay gap, we have discrimination, we have underemployment, all of these things that impact us, and then we still have to kind of navigate through what everyone else does in a normal basis with like toxic bosses, okay? And so, of course, in this, it of course taught me how to heal and how to change my behavior and to thrive in the workplace by setting new paradigms for myself. And again, we can't control what other people believe, say, or do. Thank you for all the likes on the live. But it can impact, again, how we choose to heal and how we choose to move forward. Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about professional standards and how that helps keep us out of this toxic job search cycle. Oopsies, I go back. We're going to talk about how to evaluate toxic employers, like some really tangible ways to evaluate that. We're going to talk about how you can cope before and after toxic employers, right? Because part of it is breaking that cycle by understanding and working on our emotions and our feelings and how we're feeling about things, and also to analyze how our behavior and the connection with healing from these environments. And then also we'll talk a little bit about an exit strategy, like if you're feeling that way. But I'm going to do another live about exit strategies. Okay. So the first part is setting your standards. So One of the things that is helpful, and I think that we don't really spend time thinking about, is what we want to experience in the workplace. And I think it's better for us to talk about like setting our standards so that we can define and really evaluate what we want to experience, right? So, one thing, so this is just a variety of definitions of what standards, right? So, a standard is a quality or a level of quality or attainment, right? So, it's like what is the quality that I want to see in the workplace? And or it's required or agreed upon, right? It's an idea or a measurement. Sometimes it's even a norm of what we expect. So, right, when we say norms, like how do we expect people to behave in the workplace, right? And it is comparative in some ways, right? Because you know what you don't want and you know what you do want. Well, hopefully. And if you're not, like, come on, let's talk about it. So, um, and then the last part is it's also kind of principles, right? Because some of the things that we experience in the workplace is not just like, oh, I want a supervisor who like has one-on-ones with me. Like what is a principle for you? A supervisor that really connects with you, talks with you, values you, right? In a way that is the correct way of doing things in your mind, right? So when we talk about honor or decency or civility, right? Those are some of those standards. So let me know in the comments, what is a standard that you have that you want from a supervisor or from a workplace? Now, if you don't feel like you have any standards that you've set in the past, that is totally okay. Tell me a standard that you'd like to have moving forward. In this, as we set standards, I want you to think about experiences. How do you want? Thank you so much for the love. Thank you for the gifts. Um, I want you to focus on experiences in the workplace, right? Like, how do you want to feel? How do you want to show up? How do you want to be treated, right? Those are experiences that we really want to find. And then, I feel like I skipped a slide. Oh well, it's not there. I must have accidentally deleted it. That's okay. So those experiences, I just said this. How did I feel? What did I do? How did other people act? Those are part of the standards. Sorry if you are having slide whiplash. So for me, some of my standards is like now all of our standards are different. I had somebody who, when I was talking about setting workplace boundaries, that was like, nah, girl, that's not gonna work for me. And we all are different people and we can all have different things that we like in the workplace, and that is okay. So your standards are your standards and my standards are my standards. Okay. Just have some standards. Okay. Um, so I like having a supervisor who feels more like a friend or a mentor to me, rather than somebody who I feel like is trying to control or direct my work, right? I am pretty self-sufficient. I am give me a project, run with it kind of gal. I will come get you when I need you. And so that's what I like in a supervisor. And so it's somebody that I can go to talk to in more of a friendly manner rather than truly directing my work. I want to have a supervisor who has courteous conversations with me, right? They are connecting with me as a person. They are courteous. Have genuine care about me and what I'm doing and what's going on, and that matters to me. On the other hand, like somebody who's kind of standoffish, or I don't really see that there's somebody that I can trust, or they're not transparent. Bye. I talked about the flexibility and autonomy over my work kind of thing, right? And other things that I don't like is feeling undervalued or undercompensated, right? That I'm kind of being taken advantage of by this individual and they really don't have like my best interest at heart, right? So Tamara said, I agree. Friendly supervisors are more approachable when you have issues. Yes. Okay. So, okay. Somebody's not eating me out about my supervisor being my friend. I know. It's like, I always get those people that are like, we're not here for friends. We're at work. And I was like, I mean, I spend a lot of time with you. I should like you. I'm like, I should like you. I spend a lot of time with you. Okay. Oops. Sorry. Me and my slides are struggling, right? So when I pulled out all of these things together, when I was setting my standards about what I do and what I don't like, I started to unpack those a little bit more, right? And I said, okay, so if it's true that I want a supervisor who feels like more like a friend, I want them to I want them to also view me as an equal and to trust me. That's a standard. My supervisor, wherever they are, whoever they are, I want them to see me as an equal and not as somebody less than. Again, courteous conversations, the organization, and I'm saying this even in terms of like going to an interview, right? Like this organization has a clear, kind, and personable form of communication, right? I've been there, done that with the stuffy communication, with the over professionalism, everything like that. It's just not an environment that I will ever be in again. Just because there are this is a topic for another day, but like unmasking for me in the workplace for my ADHD diagnosis meant that I wanted to unpack all of the ways that I had been serving as some standard of professionalism that was actually really deeply draining me. It is part of why I went into a state of mild depression, right? Because I felt like I had to be perfect and have this facade and everything was together. So when I left the job before that, whatever, when I left the job that I had that facade with, I wanted to show up as myself. I didn't want to show up as perfect. And so it was important for me for the next organization to have a little bit more clear, kind, personable, like more relaxed, informal conversation. And it took me a while to like get used to that too. Like unmasking is a process. But what I'm saying is like that was something that was important. And that's how I looked for it when I was interviewing. Okay. Autonomy, flexibility, excellent leadership and management skills, open about what they're doing and why, and the organization pays me competitive and recognizes good work, right? And so I say all of these things, and I know we'll talk about it later because we're gonna talk about how to evaluate employees, but these standards are going to help you be clear later in a lot of ways, which is how am I screening my supervisor? How am I screening people on an interview process? How am I screening the organization, right? These are actually the way that employers have job interviews for us. We have screening criteria for them too. Okay. So let me know if you've ever, now I have people all the time. They're like, oh, I was so worried to do that. Like maybe they weren't going to hire me. Right. And like my statement is always like, if they are not going to hire you for asking you a question, you have much greater problems that you will face if you start to work for them. Okay. So let me know, have you ever taken an approach of really screening your next supervisor, your next organization? Let me know in the comments. And LinkedIn and YouTube, y'all are quiet over there. Y'all gonna have to give me something. I see y'all. I know how many of y'all are watching. Say hello. Okay. So step 2 is now that you have your standards, you're going to start evaluating employers. Which means let us investigate. Let us find the tea. Okay, let's use those like internet sleuth detective. I know y'all. Y'all are messy. I'm messy. We'll be messy together. Okay. But like, let's use that same energy when it comes to our job search, right? Like, let's use the same energy when we're evaluating our employers, our future supervisors, all of the above. Like, go in, find out, see what you need to see before you make a decision. But I think the important part here, and I told you about how I saw red flags before that I ignored because I really wanted the opportunity, right? And that is to stand on business about these standards, right? So if you set a standard and you see anything in that job search that does not align with that standard, you know, okay, that it's not going to align. And so you got to say, oh, nope, I'm not accepting that offer. I'm not moving forward in the interview process. There was an interview process that I had before my last role, and I was interviewing with the CEO. I asked them about like their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the guy was like, oh, I just want to hire, I just want to hire the most talented, the most qualified candidates. And I was like, so you're talking to me, a Black woman, in an interview, and when I ask you about diversity, equity, inclusion, you're basically insinuating that Black women couldn't possibly be the most qualified candidate? No, thank you. No, thank you, right? And if I wasn't asking those questions, I would never got the answer to know, like, this man doesn't like Black women. This man does not like diverse talent. Okay? We're not going to talk about how that man's HR director was a Black woman. Lord have mercy. Bless her heart. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the investigation. Okay. Get your receipts. Yes, I am from Florida, and I said, bless your heart. Okay. Bless your heart. So we want you to get your receipts, right? And there are a variety of ways that you can get your receipts. Like I was just mentioning, like you do need to collect these. Do need to be clear, right? If y'all want to be on the internet talking about, oh, she should have known this or he should have known that, if he just paid attention to the signs, blah, 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 y'all be up in people's relationship business, okay? Be up in your future employer's business. Get in there. Okay, let me stop. So let's look at a couple things, right? Online reputation. What can you find about this organization, right? Have they had any things in the news about their poor employment practices? Okay. Allegedly, allegedly, Wells Fargo would be a place I would never work. I'm just kidding. I don't know how to use allegedly right. I'm just kidding. I know how to use allegedly. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, but I'm just saying, like, it's like we see all of these red flags for these employers, especially ones right now that are backing away from their commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion. That's a very clear sign that they do not care about how Black women are treated in their workplace, right? Because if they did, then they would support this, right? If you haven't been on leanin.com and looked at some of the statistics about Black women, the evidence shares that, like, whatever people want to say about diversity, equity, and inclusion, about its effectiveness or not effectiveness, the support and the development that was provided to people of color and Black women specifically post 2020 led to more Black women making it across the broken rung, which is the basically, and when you think about a career ladder, where we are now and how we get to that stage of management, right? So going from an individual contributor where we're only overseeing our own work to actually leading others, development and opportunity for leadership development, management development, those types of things led to us being promoted, right? I was one of them, right? I had management training, I had leadership training, and I was able to move through that in 2020, right? So I was one of the glass cliff girlies. Welcome, glass cliff girlies unite. Okay, so look online. What are they doing? What are they saying? What is their philosophy, right? Can you learn about their culture? There are some amazing organizations that have really great things about their culture and what they do online. And in case studies, right, where we can look and learn more about their organizations, right? I also have, let me see if I can share it really quick. I have a Black woman approved workplaces database. This is, hopefully you can see that. Okay, so if you go to the link in my profile or you scan this QR code, you can actually go to find my Black Women Approved Workplaces database, which is a database of employers that other Black women have advocated for, right? So do your research. This is one resource. I want to have more. So if you're listening to this and you have an employer that you're probably listening to this because you don't. So, okay, I'm sorry. But if you have an employer that really creates a great environment for Black women, whether you work there today or you previously did, please add them to this database or let me know in the comments. Okay. Interview. So y'all just saw my standards of things that I have, right? I would ask questions about the standards in an interview to everyone that I interviewed with. I would ask about the culture. I would ask about the leadership style. I would ask about promotional opportunities, about how work is managed and disseminated and things like that. And right, as we know more and we learn and we grow about what we want or we don't want, those things are definitely out there for you to continue to like as you know what you're looking for, you get better at asking the right questions. But what I'm saying is just start somewhere with based on the standards that you have now. Okay, sorry for me getting a little lost. Okay, and then also read through the job description. So a lot of times those red flags, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute, but a lot of times those red flags are found like directly in that job description where like you read through a job description, you're like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't look right. That's a little weird. Yeah, they'll put that foolishness in the job description. If things aren't looking right there, like believe them. Look at LinkedIn, right? So you can find out a lot about an organization by looking at their company LinkedIn profile. You can go see, like, you can scroll through and see people who have worked there. You could use the LinkedIn search to see people who previously worked there. You can reach out, which I'm kind of skipping around, but like you can do some outreach. you can like say, hey, how was your experience working with so-and-so team or whatever, right? If they've already left. Some people get a little bit cagey if you're reaching out to current employers and the team and whatnot, because sometimes they're like, oh, well, you're reaching out to like get unfair advantage or whatever in the recruitment process. Like, you don't need to go out to do outreach to ask about what the department is doing or things like that. But you may want to reach out to find out about their experience, right? And I always I'm very intentional about reaching out to other Black people as I'm looking on LinkedIn too, right? So that's a strategy because you're probably more likely to get real from them versus somebody who's not like, girl, come here. Leave. Withdraw your application. Okay, and the last part is just looking at other news articles, right? Like I said, online reputation, but you can also look for news. One of the things, if we still continue to get TikTok, like I would absolutely go look at TikTok. Like, are there any negative reviews of a particular employer on there? Yeah, do it. Do they fire anybody for a reason? Somebody airing them out on social media? Do it. Okay, so get your tea. And then the last thing on here is that people, I think get actually pretty worried about it. I was like, I don't know why, especially if you're in a leadership role, like do a site visit, like ask to shadow for a day. Like if this is a role that is that exciting and that is so important to you, like it's a really big career move, uh, go say, hey, I would really love to shadow or just spend the day in the office, right? And then like really listen, really ask questions. It gives you an opportunity to get a sense of people. Like, you know how some people kind of do those like what are those, like job trials or whatever? I know people are like, oh, I don't want to be paid. Like, I don't want to do this, I'll be paid. But like, come on. Like, if you're gonna be stuck with these people for a year, the foreseeable future before you move, like it's okay. I'm just saying it's worth it. It's worth it. Okay. That's how I feel about it. Okay. Oops. Okay, so these are a couple of ideas, right? So if I was doing this today, I would have a checklist, right? I'd say, okay, I'm looking for maybe my future supervisor's online presence. Are they online? Are they connected? What can I tell about the people that work with them? I would ask my supervisor about their values, like how are they as a leader? How do they show up as a leader? What's important to them? How do they deal with conflict? Those types of things. How do they support their team? Job description, I already talked about that. News articles, sitting in on the meeting, reaching out to a former member of the team. Okay, so these are all things you could do. Okay, so tenants from this, do the math. Make sure the math is mathing with what they're telling you, right? Okay. They say they're an inclusive organization, but nobody works there. No black women work there. Okay. Read between the lines, right? If they're saying that we are a highly ambitious, motivated environment, right? That might be just a really nice way of saying that they're aggressive and cutthroat. Read. And do not collect the red flags. Like anything that you hear that seems unsettling, I promise will be like 10 times worse when you actually see those people in person, okay? Okay, Brandon. Brandon said, what about Glassdoor? Yeah, I mean, Glassdoor is fine. I find to be okay, I'm sorry. This is my recruiter bias showing. And I feel like all of the time when I would go on Glassdoor and I would read employees reviews on there, they were always like the disgruntled employees that I was like, yeah, you tried to harm somebody at work. And that is why you have that. I'm not saying that there's not some legitimate things on there, but I feel like it's kind of like people who are having a good time, like at a restaurant or whatever, they're not the person that usually goes and writes the reviews. Always angry people. So I'm not saying that you can't take that and use that information to help you make an evaluation. But sometimes those people are angry. Sometimes those people are angry. Thank you for that question, Brandon. So Glassdoor, it is a part of the research. There's also Indeed reviews. There's also LinkedIn content where you can follow people and see what they're talking about a particular employer. Like, yes, all of the social media is perfectly okay. Just, think about it. And don't collect the red flags in your interview process. Okay. Oh, yay. Okay, so now I wanted to talk about, a little bit of some of the examples of red flags that I've seen, and kind of like, okay, how do we really connect the two? Like, what are some really tangible ways that we could see the difference between a healthy or a toxic work environment? So if you have a sign of a positive work environment, let me know in the chat. And if you also have a sign of a toxic work environment, let me know that in the chat as well. Okay. Okay, and remember to share this, like this. Okay, your friends need to not also go through the cycle. Okay, So if I look at a job description, some of the healthy signs of a job description is when they talk about collaboration, they talk about their culture, their values, things that align with you, or maybe even they talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, of course, there's a lot of language. That employer that I talked about where the guy was like, "Oh, yeah, I wanna hire qualified people, not Black women." They had a diversity, equity, inclusion statement on their website, right? So it's not to say again, you can't just take one piece of evidence and be like, run with it. What I'm saying is like, how do they talk about it? How do they stand on business about it in terms of like their actual metrics or the outcomes of their work? That's just as important. Okay. Toxic environments are often really talked about in terms of being like a fast pace, being accountable. Like these are some of the words that I've seen in just like really scary job postings. Um, oh my gosh, if you see competitive in a job posting, get out of there. I don't care if you're a salesperson. Run. Okay. And sometimes if a job posting doesn't quite make sense, you're like, what are they talking about? What does this mean? That might be a good reason to get on out of there too, right? I was having a giggle with one of my coaching clients a couple weeks ago, and she like was sending. We were looking at job postings together, and she's like, "This is like 4 jobs." Wait, and she's like reading. Wait, this is like 5, 6 jobs, and we're like, we read through that job description. And it was like 7 jobs. No. No, I do not dream. I dream of labor that I love. I do not dream of 7 jobs in one job labor, okay? Read. Another one is the super something that you notice when you're going through an interview is that the supervisor has a track record of promoting, rewarding work, or retaining employees, right? So you can ask questions about, oh, how many employees that have you managed that have been promoted? How do you reward or recognize people for their work? How many people? Well, like, what's your retention rate for your department? Okay, get it. And like also if you see that people are online are not necessarily like really talking about that they love where they are, what they do, or if you don't really get any clear feedback from either the supervisor or maybe if there's a panel where they're not really like vocal about why they love working there and working with each other. Okay. So today, I want you to take all of this information in and I want you to make a commitment to break the cycle, right? To really analyze what you're doing, what your standards are, how you're showing up in your job search, and make a commitment to looking at things a little bit differently than you currently are. And one of my favorite quotes um, is from Maya Angelou, which says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And I think we have a tendency in our job search to be either so desperate to leave the current toxic environment that we are, or so excited to go into a seemingly better environment, right? Just because it's new, that sometimes we ignore the flags or we don't want to believe that, or we're asked or we're seeking more evidence. And especially when you right? People, when they meet you in an interview or your first time interacting with them, they are always going to be on their best behavior. And so if you meet somebody and they are not on their best behavior, I can only imagine what that looks like when they're actually comfortable with you, when they think that you might be stuck there, you don't have options to leave, whatever you want to call that. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Believe them the first time. So, let's talk a little bit about healing because healing is absolutely a piece of that as we move through recovering and breaking the cycle. And again, I'm talking to you about things that have helped me heal and to cope in these environments. But I will say, right, like talking to a therapist about the experience that I had, different coping mechanisms, different ways that I could better manage those things. I just made a post yesterday with another organization that is hosting an event to talk about calming your nervous system. Right, there are a lot of different tools such as tapping or as breath work that kind of helped me move through some of these things, especially when I was just too high stress or too anxious to be able to think through how to cope, right? It was like I was like, I need an oxygen mask because I can't. Okay. So there are just so many different ways to navigate this. But so take what you need and leave what you don't. So I talked about this, like seeking mental health professionals, right? When I was in this really hard space, it was really important for me to go find another Black woman. Oh, thank you so much for the likes and welcome into the live. um, it was important for me to go find another Black woman therapist. And then I also picked a psychiatry office that had a Black woman and an ADHD um, psychiatrist, somebody who specialized in ADHD. In there, that particular like psychiatry office, they basically they had residents. So I was always working with an individual who was at the school, um, at the University of Florida. But anyway, so I wanted to not ever feel gaslight in my experiences, and I feel like that's why having either therapists or mental health professionals who are culturally competent or that share your identity in some way, shape, or form is so important. Meditation helped a lot for me again. Tapping is the exercise. So I think it's emotional freedom technique. If you go look that up, you can learn more about tapping. I always have to say this, like tapping is appropriated from Chinese culture. So you can kind of go learn about the history of that too, because white Americans just like appropriating stuff. Working on my mindset and confidence, right? Doing affirmations, having journalism, doing journaling and other things that help me kind of talk about my thoughts and beliefs. I don't really like writing a lot, but sometimes just exercises, mental exercises, or kind of speaking out the different ways that I want to feel. I have a manuscripting journal over there. I won't go grab it. But if you're on TikTok, it's in my showcase if you want to get access to it. Oh, it's also on my Amazon storefront. But it's one of the things that helped me really start to think about my thoughts and how I was feeling each day a little bit better. Um, Seeking joy and balancing work. So one of the things that I talk about is how there for individuals who have ADHD, there is a dopamine deficit. And so a lot of the times we are needing to go seek things that give us dopamine, a thrill, something exciting, something that's going to kind of boost our, I don't know, like, I don't know how to say it, but it's like, it's a neurotransmitter, right? But it's like our energy, things that are exciting to us, right? And so I would need to be more intentional about finding little ways to embed joy in my day. One of the things I had a running joke with one of my former direct reports is that every time she would have something that she needed to ask me about, I would be stretching on the floor in my office. And so what I do is I just play some meditation music. I would get on the floor in my office and I would do stretches, tapping, breath work, things that would help me recenter myself in my body. And then setting boundaries. So if you're here and you haven't seen my setting boundaries live stream that I did, I think that was last week, you can go watch that. It's something that I really think was so helpful in discussing what good boundaries look like in the workplace. Woo. So one of the things I like to talk about is like when you're healing, right? And I feel like a lot of times healing is such an subjective thing to think about. But I like to consider healing as this idea of that these traumatic experiences no longer impact my feelings, beliefs, or behaviors. I've also put two other definitions of healing on the screen, which is to be free from injury or disease, like, or to heal from the wound, to like restore something that maybe was lost or that was broken or hurt. And also is to replace something that has been damaged, to resolve or to make better something that has been damaged. And so for me, I feel like when I'm in a place where I feel like that harm or that trauma has been resolved, it's when I am no longer impacted by it in the way. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It doesn't mean I gaslight myself into ignoring the harm or the trauma, right? Like I talk about it all the time. If you've been here, you know that. But that's how I like to view it for myself, right? So have I broken the cycle that way? And so I like to think about I like to think about how I can analyze and change my behavior so that, again, it's no longer impacting me, right? And I don't mean to just like, oh, I'm just going to change this behavior. I'm just going to work through it. Like, we do have to work through our thoughts and our feelings and why we feel the way that we do. So like the self-reflection and introspection part of this never goes away. But I think there's 5 key elements of this: challenge, history, belief or interpretation, potential action, and to evaluate action. So I know that's like pretty like out there. So I'm going to talk about the differences, right? So I think this is kind of what, at least in my experience, what unhealed looks like, right? So I have this experience of like thinking that my supervisor is just going to always have something bad to say about me, right? Like as Black women, we have this trauma most of the time, right? Where we're just being attacked. We're being dismissed, we're being disrespected, and we're not being valued, right? And so over time, this kind of begins to eat at us because we come to expect that to happen, and we begin to act on the idea that somebody is always coming to attack us, right? And so the challenge that we're having is that your supervisor, in this moment, right? The challenge that your supervisor called you to talk about a work task, right? And then based on your history, whatever you've experienced, it could be true in this moment or it could not be, is that your supervisor only, your supervisor only calls you to criticize your work, right? And so because that's your history, you believe that your next supervisor, whoever you're working with now, is going to call you to criticize your work, right? And so that's why a lot of people have like, they tell their supervisor, if you're just tell me why you're calling me, just give me some insight or some knowledge into why you're calling me before you call me, because I want to do it the other way, right? It gives me anxiety, right? And that's a lot of that history, right? And so because of that, your potential action that you're preparing for in this moment when your supervisor is calling you, you're preparing for war, right? You're going to get defensive. You're going to act accordingly. You're going to make sure that you have all of your receipts and that you're going to set the record straight and other things. Or, I mean, sometimes you're like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to shut out of the conversation, right? Because we don't want the smoke. we're just done. We're tapping out. We're quiet quitting, whatever. But like those are actions still nonetheless. Or behavior, I should say. Maybe one of them is non-action, but it's still behavior. And then, so you have this opportunity to say, how am I going to act in this, right? So it's like, okay, you have the moment to say, this is my current toxic experience. Or excuse me, you have the opportunity to say, this is what I experienced in the past. Will I experience this again? Right. And you can say, I think I will experience this again. And so your conclusion will be that I can't trust my manager because they will criticize my work. Right. On the other hand, healing in the same exact scenario, especially when you've exited a toxic employer, is to have a different belief or a different interpretation, right? So it could be that my supervisor called to talk about a work task. In my history, I know that my past supervisor would only call to talk about criticizing my work, right? But I now know that my supervisor could really be calling me to talk through issues, find solutions, or to support me. Maybe something bad did happen, but if I have a supervisor that actually cares about me and my value and kind of how I'm doing, right, they might just have more of an open conversation. So instead of acting defensive or maybe even like withdrawing from the conversation, maybe I'm going to get curious. Like, ask my supervisor, what's the nature of the call so I can make sure that I'm prepared, right? That way you can go in with maybe it's a little bit more ease, maybe a little bit more comfort. And in this case, right, you didn't necessarily use your past experience to predict your future, right? So maybe you're going into a much more healthy, happy dynamic in this situation, right? And so if you did have a great connection point with your supervisor, maybe that as you move forward, you can learn that by working together, maybe your supervisor isn't going to come to those meetings to criticize you, right? Maybe they're going to come there to help you move forward or to grow or to learn, right? Or just to celebrate you, right? I know. So that's kind of what it looks like in action and examination, right? And so what I want to know is like where you are right now. Are you in a place where you really feel challenged in your working dynamics? Are you somebody who's really trying to heal from those past experiences and feel like you're able to show up a little bit better? Or are you kind of stuck in this cycle? Let me know in the comments. Okay, so I think this is our last step, which is taking our exit. I was like, oh, I'm always talking more than I think I would, but there's so much detail here. So one of the things that I would say is to take a moment, no matter where you are, to breathe and exhale and take a step, right? So when we're in this toxic environment, it's always hard to see the bigger picture, right? We're stuck in this moment, in this really challenging environment. Um, but ultimately, where you are right now is in the grand scheme of your life, in the grand scheme of who you will be and who you can become. It's a very small moment for you, I promise. And so take a moment, breathe, exhale, exhale, exhale. And by exhale, I mean like take it in, think about it, let it go, and then take a step forward, right? And so you want to make sure that you give yourself grace, that you take care of yourself first in this moment, right? Like whatever it is, the stress, the challenges that you're dealing with, focus on you and focus on what you want and process. And when you exhale, right, process how you feel, acknowledge what you need in this moment, and then the step is to take one small step towards the goal, right? And so if you are in a place where you're so anxious, right, things are so challenging that you can't really see or feel yourself, take a moment to just truly listen to what you need in that moment, whether that's kind of implementing something to help you feel better, or maybe it's a goal to say, I am going to take a step to exit, right? Maybe I'll work on my resume today because I feel okay to do that, right? Maybe it was not yesterday, maybe not tomorrow, but today I feel okay to just maybe update my resume and apply to one job, right? Okay. And there are so many different ways to do this, right? So these are the multiple steps, right? Like you could launch a job search. You could decide to exit, take a break, freelance, whatever. You could take a step of self-love, right? How do you take time to reduce anxiety, seek therapy, get a coach, seek a way to distract yourself. And you could also do something that's more proactive, right? Like setting boundaries or reviewing your work or things like that that are going to help you feel a little bit better in this space. So, a couple of things that I think would help is to set a goal, right? If you are going to exit, like this environment that you're in is so toxic that it's just not going to work for you, set a goal of when you're going to leave, set a goal of where you're going, when you're going, why, to help you move forward. Also, break out that goal into mini goals, right? So, saying I'm going to leave is massive. It's also overwhelming, right? What does it take to leave for you? Is it saying, okay, I'm going to figure out where I'm going next? Like, what's my next job? Is it getting that resume together? Is it reaching out to your network? Is it, maybe it is about staying and resolving the issues where you are, right? Maybe maybe you actually don't have a terrible supervisor, right? Maybe you just need to work on communication, right? All these things are true. And I think the last thing is that we need to release meaning. So a lot of times when we have these setbacks or these challenges in the workplace, we take those setbacks and assign that to our personal character, right? So because I'm having these issues, I'm not really worthy of a promotion. I'm not really worthy of having a great career. I'm not really worthy of loving the job and the work that I do. Like we attach so many meanings to how we experience the world. And that does us a disservice, right? Because that impacts our emotions and our feelings, okay? And so we have to start to release those feelings or the meaning to that. So set an exit goal if you're exiting, set your standards, and assess what resources you need to be successful, right? And we talked about a lot of different resources that you could potentially use in this setting or in this space, in this time, right? Okay. So I was trying to go through this a little bit early because your girl got a call at 6 or 7. But as we go through this, definitely let me know if you have any questions in the comments. If I can, I'll go back and answer them. If they're quick, I'll answer them before I close up the live. But I really, really enjoyed talking this through. As I mentioned, this presentation was one that I did, I think, in an hour and a half in my community. I love doing webinars in there based on the content, but this was kind of a little bit of a modified, a little bit faster version of that training in the Career Love community. And right now I am in the process of re-envisioning this space for Black women so that we can work on our careers, work on our businesses, work on our lifestyles, and ultimately bring that into better alignment where we love what we do, who we are, and how we show up in a way that allows us to be our true authentic self and healing and love and just loving who we are and what we do, right? So if you would like to join me for the relaunch of this community, you can I'm bringing it up. You can join me for my launch party. So I am sharing a QR code for that on the screen. If you scan that, it'll take you to a page where you can basically join the list to get notified when the new community is launched. You can join me for my launch activities. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I have really just the most sweet, amazing, beautiful Black women in this community. And so I'm happy to be re-envisioning it to better serve them and all of these things. So if you want to join me, you can scan the QR code or you can go to the link in my profile. If you're on TikTok, that's in my profile. You can go to my profile, click the link. If you are on YouTube, it should be in basically the description, or you can go to my website, which should also be in the description. And if you are on LinkedIn, it should be linked there. But let me know if you don't have that. I'm going to try and drop it in the comments. So y'all are amazing. This was a great conversation. Oh, thank you, Catrice. I didn't see the comment. Sorry. You're so welcome. Thank you for joining me. And so yeah, join me if you are able to. I would love to see you there. I would love to see you become part of the community. And also, I'm a career coach, right? And I'm newly a business coach, right? Because I want other Black women. I want to take all of the information that I've learned and share it so that we can all kind of build wealth together, have better career outcomes. And again, in this effort to make sure that employers know that as Black women, we deserve it all, right? We deserve to be seen. We deserve to be valued. We deserve to be paid, right? And we deserve to have better than the toxic supervisors that we have. And so again, if you are in a space where you're working on your career, you want to see something different for you, you want to build wealth, you want to ask for the raise you deserve, you want to stand on business with your supervisor and set some boundaries, you can go ahead and schedule a call with me and we can kind of talk about how to best move forward where you are in your career, and what I call clarity chat. So we kind of go through what's going on, which is what I have at 7. If you're my 7 o'clock call, I'm coming. But that being said, after this, please let me know if you have any questions. I would love to answer them later. Slide into my DMs, schedule a call, whatever works. But either way, I have really loved this time with you all, and I'm wishing you best wishes. That is not my next event. My next event is about monetizing your gifts, right? So I told you I'm a business owner. I work through a lot of these things to be able to put myself in a better space in my career so that I could really invest time and energy into my business. And I'm talking about how the way that I was meant to monetize my gifts as a coach and as a business coach, a career coach and as a business coach was actually there the whole time, and I ignored it. So we're going to talk about that. Okay. Woo! All of that being said, oops, I'm trying to get to me. This is my face. All right. So I love y'all. I hope you really enjoyed this. Oh, I'm sorry. You're welcome, Bridget. Thank you for joining me. All right. I love y'all. I will see you all later. Okay. Bye. Bye-bye.